So I can say all that again.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Cindy Silva, and I'm here with my friend Jeannie Zandi. We're going to talk about intimacy today on the Energetic Wisdom podcast. I'm really grateful that we're doing this series, Jeannie, because it always feels like we have more to say when we end. It's like a new beginning, and this, the space between these conversations is just full of insights. And yeah, I think we ping on each other's awareness in a way that just pulls threads, and they want to be woven back together. And
I have this image of just this ever branching tree. It's like as soon as we head down, or ever branching like road, as soon as we head down one road, like eight other roads open, and maybe even multi-dimensionally.
and so our topic today is intimacy. And before we launch into that, or as a way of launching into that, I'd love for you to talk about your Holy Work Challenge, because I received an email and see that you're offering another 30-day challenge. And what is the Holy Work Challenge? It is sort of the bedrock of your offerings at Living as Love. So let's have you share about that.
Thank you. Thank you. And as we were speaking before, um, I like that you're asking me about this because the ground of intimacy is intimacy with our own selves, our own experience, our breath, feel of ground, feel of wind on our faces, aliveness, life right in the moment. And we're conditioned to blow by that and to fix our attention on kind of the hamster wheel thinking, nowhere near the moment where kind of that's what makes life worth living. It's where beauty comes from, it's where our deepest being can be accessed, outside of the everyday mind. And in my teaching, in every meditation, I draw people down into the moment. Feel your breath, feel ground, whatever. Drawing us into an intimacy with our living, our life, our living being. And, that includes sensation, but it also includes our noticing awareness. And those two marry to be what we are, what I am, and it's like this. And I find that to be, at least for me as a teacher of embodied spirituality, kind of the bedrock or the ground for everything else, and certainly the ground for intimacy with other beings. Because in order to be intimate with another being, you bring yourself to the degree that you know yourself, that you're aware of yourself, that you're intimate with your own experience, you can enter into intimacy with someone else. So the Holy Work Challenge is kind of a funny name. It's basically a way that people can have support, like deep and regular support, to peer into a practice for themselves because they want to, because they're curious, and also because it has a kind of a self styled commitment. And everyone's allergic to commitment. The word commitment is like, oh, I'm not good at that. We're very harmed in our culture in being able to follow through with things. And there's a lot of reasons why. And so part of the Holy Work Challenge is also inquiring into our relationship with commitment and with mercy, and a new model of commitment that comes from the heart, that comes from being realistic with yourself, that comes from the fire of your own longing versus what someone else tells you to do, and cramming yourself into a box and whipping yourself to get to the finish line and all that old model. So it has, it's 30 days long. It has 5 class kind of Q&As with me. It has a library of some recordings, and it has a Facebook group where people can share. It also has optional share groups. People don't have to, but they can be part of an online share group of other people in the group. And what we do is we each do a self-styled commitment based on a kind of a felt inquiry that came to me as I was trying to describe, how do I sit with people? How do I show up with people? How do I meet people? And in that, talking about the elements of that, there came this 7 aspect way of playing with being present. And people can pick one aspect or all 7. There's just so many ways to do it. the kind of the mildest being, wake up in the morning, wiggle your toes, and notice how it feels. So people get to kind of choose where they are, because some people just haven't had the experience of being able to make a commitment and follow through on it. And people can share openly about what it's like. We also welcome introverts who aren't so hip on sharing. The minimum share is once a week, and you can just say hi. There's not any big requirement to write novels or anything. But it's really a way for 30 days, especially at the start of the year. It's nice, and we do it twice a year, to kind of band together. And what I love about the people that are attracted to this work is that they're real, and they are speaking things that are actual. There's no spiritual bypassing. So whoever someone is, however spiritually adept or spiritually flunky they feel, it doesn't matter, because we're all humans and we're all working kind of in tandem in our own places. So there's really support for the diversity of experience. So it's a blast, and it happens in March. I think the application cutoff is in February. We do it 2 times a year because it's the prerequisite for my longer programs. I want to make sure people know, if you're going to sign up with me for 8 months, you might want to know what it's like to be with me for 30 days first. So, yeah, but it's, it stands by itself. Anyone who is seeking to deepen in their relationship to themselves, to spirit, to living, it's just generically appealing. There's no creed. There's no, you can be a Christian, you can be a Jew, you can be a Muslim, and you can join us in sitting every day. Yeah.
And I love the simplicity of it, even though, as you described the container and so forth, it can feel a little complex, but the simplicity is to sit, acknowledge the holy, the presence, to notice what draws you up and out, really recommit to sensation, what you're experiencing. It's just such a simple process.
It's so simple, and it can be absolutely simplified. Each person picks an aspect or however they want to use it, and according to what they're curious about. And so it is tremendously simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And fun, because, I'm a goofball, and I like to make fun of spiritual seriousness. And so,
Irreverent.
yeah, we do a lot of posting of funny memes, and
Yeah,
yeah,
it
yeah,
is. Yeah, and you do attract just beautiful people. That's
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
yeah. And such a variety of people, such a diverse group of people whose commonality is just wanting to put their feet on the ground, wanting to bring the rubber to the road. People who are, interested in spirituality as it is lived in everyday life. Yeah, not as an escape from everyday life, although it can be nice to sit on the cushion and forget all about everything.
Yeah. So when we brought up the topic of intimacy, I liked something specifically that you shared. You said intimacy with our own experience instead of, but you also did include self. So I want to just play a little bit with that, because there's this intimacy with self with a capital S, so to speak, and then there's intimacy with self with a smaller s. So I like when you say intimacy with our own experience, because even though that is our personal quote self, it sort of takes the identification with a certain someone, a selfing sort of, um, into, for me, sensation, into actual what's here right now as an experience. Um, it doesn't necessarily have to be labeled or identified or have a role, right?
Yeah. And I think, we can get so much into the words that the words can have, and our mind can have its own weird spiritual, kind of like a overlord or something. We can get so into the words that we get away from the main event, which is that we exist, and it's like this. In this moment, my experience is like this. All the ingredients are right there. However, we name them, we are all having the experience of noticing. We're all noticing. We're all breathing, unless we hold our breath for a sec. We're all, unless we're skydiving, we're all resting on the earth. We all have the sky above us. We all experience, unless we have some kind of strange, affliction, we all experience the feel of the temperature around us or the wind on our faces. And in this very, what you would call mundane experience, lies in investigating that and being curious about that, in talking about that and exploring that. We're in the hall of the Lord. We're, so to speak, we're in the living flow of life. And we can look at various aspects, just like we can look at a chair distinctly. I can look at my little bottle of kombucha distinctly. I can notice my body distinctly, for sure. But I can also soften and open to kind of the flow of the building blocks of all that. What builds this as a discrete thing? The feel of the cold in my hand, the image of a certain shape. And so when we invite ourselves out of like all we learned and our attention fused on the next moment where we're going, what we're trying to get to, we come back and down to the simplicity, this noticing awareness that is the source of all yum is right there for us to sit as. And we don't need fancy words, and we don't need fancy practices, and we don't need to have a lot of education or anything else, or to have been meditating forever. To just be curious about, wow, what am I? What is this? Not from a mental place, but from an experiential place. What's it like to look out of these eyes? What's it like to breathe and ground and feel presence? By presence, I just mean the sense of being.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the taking our awareness into that which is experiencing through us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't really separate it myself, because I don't experience it as separate unless it's useful to point out. If you're looking at a lovely vista, someone might say, oh, look at the third tree to the right, there's an owl in it. And then he goes, zoom, I want to know what owl is. So that can be useful, but I find that we can sometimes get hung up trying to hunt around for which is the self and which is the other self. And when we drop out of the mind into direct experience, the building blocks have no self in them. The pure noticing, it's the mind that inserts selfdom, this like mini idea of who I am. And when we talk about intimacy, like my immediate thought is, well, we have a lot of aspects. I can be intimate with something that is so part of my every moment experience, like breath. I can get to know from a felt way, which is kind of an embodied wisdom, what my breath is like, when I hold my breath and why, when it's full. What does it feel like to breathe after you've cried a lot? What does it feel like to breathe when it's a beautiful spring day? What's it feel like to breathe when you're in a polluted atmosphere? Being intimate with this most basic experience, so that when I'm with you and I'm with another, I can notice and be intimate with my experience. Am I stopping my breath because I was taught that other people are a threat? That might be something I'll want to know in intimately relating with another, so that when I start to hold my breath, I can go, oh, I'm intimate with my breath. Hi, breath. Oh, I'm intimate with my body, which is feeling fear right now. And very likely, if I start relating to you without being aware of that fear, I'm going to start some trouble with you. I'm going to turn you into a scary person. But when I'm intimate with my experience, I say, oh, the creature of the body is a little scared. I'm going to give it some breath and I'm going to go slowly here. And that way I build an intimacy with whatever you really are rather than what I project on you because I'm skipping over things in myself and throwing them over there and having some relationship with something other than you as you are.
Right, right. I love that you bring it to the breath and the lungs and the intimacy, because our lungs are the only internal organ that take in the outside air, right? And so that is being intimate with our environment, is the lungs are the first sort of
Oh,
entry point.
it's such, I mean, when you hang out, we're taught to just, yeah, breath, big deal. I know what breath is, move on. Because when we turn things into concepts, we shrink them into a little it, right? But when we start to investigate what breath actually is, there is an incredible exchange going on, as you say, with the outside to the inside, the outside to the inside. There's literally a lovemaking going on. We are being breathed, and we didn't even invent it. This is not choiceful. I
Right,
mean, we can
right.
hold our breath for a moment, but there is a kind of at the base of our experience, an intimacy with our surroundings through the experience of breath. I am taking in the world. I am, how do I say, entering, that my breath is entering the world. And there's something beautiful going on alchemically with that air coming in. There's a dependence, which is beautiful. There's an interdependence. Our bodies and the air, our bodies and the ground, our bodies and the sunlight, our bodies and the vegetables, the green things and the animals. And this enjoyment, it's not always enjoyment, right? We can be intimate with stubbing our toe, and that's not so pleasant. And as we know, on earth, there are plenty of things that aren't pleasant. And this is a whole part of the reason why we might avoid intimacy with our experience, because some things are overwhelming. And, that's a whole study that's being done with trauma resolution and things. And a very important part of becoming intimate with our experience is knowing what to do with the overwhelming or challenging aspects of our experience so that we can, in a way, live our best life. You know, when someone shows us how to tie our shoes, we stop tripping over our shoelaces. When someone shows us how to soothe our bodies, we stop barging into situations, you know, terrified and unprepared, and only create more mess for ourselves. So it's very practical. To be intimate with our experience is also to know, like being intimate with anything. If I'm going to be intimate with a tiger, I might want to be intimate with a tiger with a wall between us.
Yeah. Well, back to the lungs, and what you're sharing brings up this whole other side to breathing, which is the exhale, right? And the lungs are connected to, in Chinese medicine, the large intestine and the skin, and these are all the organs of elimination. So the breath not only is an intimate way to be open to receiving, but a way that we can let go of and release what can lead to these stories and these defenses if we're not able to let things go. So um, yeah, that just brings up an interesting kind of question in my mind, like how is intimacy connected to letting go?
Yeah, well, absolutely, because in my experience, we, how do I say this? To me, intimacy involves no, no distance, no wall. Something is coming up close. Something is absolutely opening to another. Whether it's like to be intimate with the smell of a flower, you know, we pause, we put our attention on the flower, we open our bodies and we open our noses to deeply take in the smell of flower. Now we're being intimate with flower to a degree that we know flower in a kind of an embodied way. I think this is why in the Bible they say, like, Sarah knew Isaiah or something. Sorry if I'm coupling the wrong people, but hopefully I'm not like ruining anyone's day with that. Um, but to to make love with someone truly, to be open in all senses, to come so close to someone, to experience them deeply, to know them. So to know flower is to allow and just a radical opening. And in my experience, the intimacy of awakening is the intimacy of all of the walls falling. So there are no longer two things. There's no longer protecting. I mean, sometimes we protect, right? Oh, thank you. No, I would not like to be punched in the face right now. But we can stay in oneness with that kind of protection. The protection I'm talking about is a numbing and a sealing off from fear, a rigidity that keeps the world out because we are afraid that we might not be able to handle our experiences. And there's some intelligence in that in terms of, modulating our experience so we don't get overwhelmed by it. We may not want to, smell 18 flowers at once. It might be too much. So there's movement in and out. But to me, like kind of I don't know if it's a definition of intimacy, but if I was to make a word collage, which is kind of how I investigate things, right? We don't need to make principles. We can just say openness, intimacy, openness, some kind of merging at the edges of so-called this one and that one. So the merging, the coming together at the edge of my capacity to smell and my nose and the flower and its scent and an experience. This is intimacy to me. It's the experience of two aspects coming near each other in an open way to know each other and be altered by each other.
Right.
That to be and to be here simply. I'm thinking of experiences of intimacy that I've had in just meeting someone new or hanging out with them and being wide open and taking in the sound of their voice and all the things their voice is carrying. Like if someone's touched in the heart, you can feel that tone in the voice. If someone's afraid, you can feel that tone in the voice. If someone's excited or curious, that tone. Their face, like there's just so much when our attention isn't fused to me and how do I get there, and and it's just open to the moment, to another. There's so much to experience there, and then how it touches here. Wow, that person's touched, and wow, watch how my heart gets immediately touched as their heart is touched, and we're both in this kind of whew, like sitting in the moment of immediacy, being touched by gratitude or the beauty of the moment or whatever. And I'm talking about the rosy parts now, and we can't skip over also the gnarly parts of dancing with another being when more challenging things are happening, which I'm happy to talk a blue streak about too.
Yeah, there's a couple threads coming into awareness here. Well, one that keeps coming up is in this intimacy, the into me I see, to break that word down in a fun, playful kind of way. And these other words that come up, like when we're in more of a contracted state, a shadow frequency, if you will, is more of a dishonesty, right? And then on the other side, there's this transparency and intimacy in the middle. And this comes from a system I study called Gene Keys, and each of the hexagrams in the I Ching have a bandwidth, if you will, a spectrum of consciousness, and intimacy is at the center of the fulcrum, and dishonesty on one side and transparency on the other.
Mm, mm. Yeah,
So,
this is a whole fascinating area because it enters into things like privacy or discernment versus dishonesty and concealing something out of fear. And that's a whole area
Yeah,
of
even from
intimacy
our
to
own self,
inquire
with
into. Yeah.
intimacy with ourselves, we're often dishonest with ourselves. Obviously, if that's the case, that's going to show up in our relationships, right?
Yes, because every, well, every unconscious place is a veil. Every place where we are unconscious of something in us, there is a wall. And every place where we are not honest with ourselves, there's a wall. There's what I can handle and what I can't handle, unconscious. There's what I like to think about myself and what I would rather not think about myself, a wall. Every place where there's a wall, or some call it being folded, that is an aspect of us that we can't bring to the table in our fullness with another human being. And I think we all have the experience. I remember I made this friend when I was in my 20s named Peg. And her sensitivity and her presence and the depth to which she could comprehend and receive my experience called out more expression of my experience to the point where my sense of myself grew as though these ghost limbs suddenly came out and popped out. I was just, and we all have that experience that when we talk about some of our experiences that are maybe less than ordinary, and another being just gets us, we start to feel all plumped out. Then we go to someone who doesn't get it at all and we try to tell them and they go, "What?" And we can shrink back down. Many of us can forget about those parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so there's something about our shared capacity to receive and comprehend each other, or at least sit in wonder and non-defense against what someone else has experienced and is sharing, that allows the intimacy, the amount of ourselves that's sort of showing and available for connection to grow. And I've been, because I have a lot of non-ordinary experience, because, for a variety of reasons, I do experiments into what sort of humans are fun for me to hang out with and under what contexts, because there are various contexts. And it's not just that people, how do I say this? People who are teachers don't necessarily need to hang out with other people who are teachers or other people who have had their same experiences. To me, there's a capacity in other beings to be open and curious and in wonder, even if they haven't had the experiences that you have had, that allow a kind of a full exposure of all the levels and the petals. And it just seems like the more that we can expose our levels and be met with reverence, the more the feeling of intimacy is that much fuller.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, there's when you're doing this, the petals and the flower and the opening,
Mm-hmm.
it reminds me of hiding, and that we've been conditioned in a lot of ways to hide if we didn't grow up in an environment where our experiences were understood. And then there comes a point, and there's that famous quote by Anais Nin about the rosebud, and it became too uncomfortable to remain tight, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm seeing, yeah, this beautiful process of um, intimacy as this bud opening and trusting more and more space opening up, because it is like internally the DNA is wound tight, like, and when we um, become more trusting and open, it starts to unwind because the constriction is relaxed, the tension's relaxed, and that spiral starts to unwind, and um, the light that's trapped inside starts to come out and be emitted. And that naturally creates this field of attraction to attract people or resources that draw that out even more. And
Mm.
so like when a flower opens and releases its nectar, the birds and the bees come because
Yeah.
it has a new field around it that has resources that make it part of the circle of life, right? Not that it ever wasn't in the beginning, but it goes through a maturity that brings it into. And I think that, intimacy is a process of maturity. Not that we weren't born that way, but we come, through the conditioning and get conditioned away from that. And then we have to go through this reclamation, it feels like. And I may just be speaking of my own experience, but I think it's, pretty collective.
Yeah.
But what I've, witnessed and what I see kind of in the collective now is the pressure to become more real, as you say, to become more, to, to let those hidden parts become more visible. And that is a process of intimacy.
Yeah. And the intimacy with our own experiences and our own hidden places. It's like wherever we are known to ourselves, we can consciously then wield that. If we are not known to ourselves and therefore not intimate with a part of ourselves, then it's unconsciously wielded and can do harm. And I think this is the pain, as I do the work that I do. And I do really deep work with both women and men. I do men's retreats, and I really get, and I've been studying a long time, sort of the boxes of gender conditioning and how the sets of conditioning interweave to, pretty much make it impossible for us to find each other. um, that everyone, everyone, even the people that are hopeless about ever finding it and so are shut down, but we as human beings long for and crave to be known, to be close, to be held, to be comprehended, to be safely seen and valued. And just because we have a great longing for it doesn't mean, and this is sort of like riffing off of your comment about maturity, doesn't mean that we yet have the capacity to keep ourselves open or conduct ourselves in a way that encourages someone else's openness. And so, I think because, astrologically I'm so stacked to learn everything through relating, a lot of my learning has been through relating, relationships of all sorts, and really looking at, particularly in myself, how do I be a harmless presence that allows other beings to flower open in my presence? How do I do no harm so that people will play with me? You know what I'm saying? Like in the simplest way. And there's so many. We can focus a lot on how someone else needs to be for us to feel loved, and that's sort of a young perspective. What are you going to do for me? Oh, this one looks good. I'll go get that one because that one will love me the way I've always wanted to be loved. That is kind of our young aspect. And then the sort of more mature aspect looks at this one and says, well, what am I bringing to the table in each of my interactions? How intimate am I with myself? How well do I know myself? How well do I know the unconscious aspects that might be defensive or bite someone, or if they say the wrong thing? And so this maturing and becoming known to ourselves ups the chances that we will be able to create an environment in our intimate explorations that will host another person's risks and unfoldings and be a safe environment for them to do so, which to me is like a lifelong inquiry and goes beyond lovers. It goes to me across gender, across race, across difference. How do I become a being that other beings, no matter what they're like, I don't care if they have three heads and, you know, come from another planet. How do I, or animals or whatever, how do I be a safe haven for another person's revealing, which is such a beautiful gift when beings reveal themselves in our presence, you know.
Yeah, it takes me to this, the concept that everything is consciousness, right? It's all concept when we're speaking language, but that it's all consciousness seeking to know itself through these different forms and relate to itself with the least amount of resistance, filters, um, distractions. And so I see this change in uh, our humanity, our species, in the direction of lots of different um, changes in sexual orientation and gender as being a way for consciousness to eliminate some of these obstacles or boxes you speak about that it's having to relate to itself through. And it's like consciousness is seeking a form that allows its fullest expression and creativity, and anything blocking that is going to get pushed up against.
Yeah.
And when we see these genetic mutations that support more freedom, it puts a threat on these structures and complexes we've created and invested in
Yeah.
to feel safe and separate. And now um, we're being, faced with um, having to look at how it really isn't serving us anymore to hold on to um, what was, because
Yeah.
wants to be is certainly the driver.
Yeah. And the challenge then is because we formulated those conceptual boxes to have ourselves feel safe and secure. I know what you are, I know what I am, I know how we're supposed to relate. Good, phew. We don't have to relate chaotically, right? I don't have
Yeah.
to wonder, are you going to kill me? What are you? Do I eat you? Do I play with you? Do I
What do you
run
do?
from you?
What do you do for a living?
Yeah, all that, right? We we built those to order our experience in a way that made us feel secure. And you can see the more scared a person, the more rigid their boxes are. But when we're invited out of our boxes, which is revolution of all sorts, we we have to have something else. We have to have something else, some other way for the scared parts of us to be able to navigate other than boxes. And this is, I feel, the way that the all of the intelligence and the learning that's coming from trauma resolution provides. And this is also part of this basic teaching that is in this program I was talking about, is that what can we ground in? What can we soothe in? What can we wrap around ourselves so that we feel safe outside of these, safe to venture into new undefined territories? Well, a relationship with our breath, a relationship with ground, a direct experience that I am not currently being harmed, a relationship with the present moment and the benevolence in it, to me, is what takes the place of those boxes. But that shift has to be tender, slow, patient, because any of us with box experiences have fear under there about the chaotic nature of relating outside of boxes. And so I see, in terms of slowly being willing to let go of the identities that make me feel good about myself, there has to be some way that I navigate that threat other than with those. And to me, this is the beautiful inquiry of embodiment, is that to the degree that I am embodying the openness and the freedom of spiritual awakening, embodying in my body, when you come toward me, I am free of fear. I am grounded. I am breathing. I am open. I am curious. I'm in touch with what's actually going on. Then the light comes to earth and dances as us, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, yeah, what I hear you saying is the importance of this embodiment, presence, being with what's real and now, and also combining that with an understanding and a knowledge of the awareness of trauma resolution, of this whole field of understanding. Um, because I think you mentioned spiritual bypassing before. A lot of us think we can just go into um, the light, right? And not look at the darkness or those scared parts and integrate them. But I feel like what you're pointing at is also, maybe without even saying it, when we do understand both sides, the actual experience of it and the understanding, that we can be compassionate towards others who are still in boxes and not now judge that they haven't done their work or
Yeah, that would be putting them in a box.
right. So yeah, so I just yeah, speaking about because there's so much now coming forward, more available information about trauma and um, yeah,
If I step out of my box, let's say I'm a man who has grown up within men's conditioning, and I see a young man coming along dressed in women's clothing and playing, maybe it's a trans man, maybe it's someone gender fluid, they're just playing in that.
mhm,
And yikes, up comes fear.
mhm,
I don't know how to relate to this person. I got nailed for wearing my sister's dress when I was 4. All the playground stuff comes back. Yikes, fear. How am I going to relate to you, gender fluid human, when this fear is present? And the degree to which this is what trauma resolution helps us play with is, how do I soothe my body? How do I find resources to deal with that fear, be aware of that fear, ground and stay open so that I can start to digest and move through some of the rigidities. And this goes for men and women too, in close relationship with each other, whatever the genders. How do I become aware of where I'm afraid, not function out of my fear, but meet and digest it? This is where the studies of trauma resolution are so useful. It expands our capacity to be with things that we're frightened of without going into weird behaviors that shut everything down. Defensiveness,
yeah,
flight.
that's helpful. Yeah, because I recently got in touch with this deep um, part, and felt like what Jung had studied and talked about with going into the shadow and confronting these complexes, and this felt like a program. It's the only way I can think of it to explain it, but it was just this insatiability, like it wanted, there was this sort of craving, and it wanted this thing, and yet at the same time, I knew once it was satiated, it would not be satisfied. It would want the next and the next and the next. And I was like, wow, I was really like in this and going, this has been driving my life.
Yeah,
Right. So
right.
awareness. And then now how do you deal with it? Right now, that it's there. And it's not like I hadn't known that that's there and it's in the collective, but to actually confront it and be in this field with it in the way that it was wanting to be seen and known, and it
Yeah.
was time. And now the unfolding of that, how to recognize when it arises and how to sit with it and be with it so that it isn't making my choices.
Yes, this is like such a very important arena to get good at if we're wanting to embody, because that's precisely the process right there. We have a month right now in one of my courses called Unwinding Reactivity.
Mhm.
And people are choosing areas in their life where they have some unconscious reactive pattern that drives them and the people around them crazy. You know, they feel helpless with it and whatever. And part of what we do is people have a reactivity journal where they track each time the thing happens, and they write about what was happening before, what happened during, what happened after, and sinking down into the feels there so that awareness is built. And as awareness is built, we start to be able to have more choice where something was below the surface and sort of wrapped in a little, almost, I think of it as like the casing around a transmission. You know, it's like that machinery is in a case. You're not going to get at it, right? That's what happens when it's below consciousness. It just
Mhm.
runs your life, as you said. You can't touch it. You can't. And the awareness calls it up and calls it loose. And soon, awareness is actually able to get into the little micro events that go into that. Because when all those events speed by so fast, when we're reactive, because we learned that so well, just like some of the things I know how to, like typing. You know, I type an ungodly number of, and I don't even think about where's the A, where's the S anymore. It's
Right.
so speedy. That's the same. We're learning monsters, even in our reactive places, especially learning monsters if we were really scared. It has our survival programming behind it. And so the awareness kind of loosens it, brings it up to consciousness. And if we stay at it and with it, with our awareness and our noticing, it starts to loosen and there starts to be space between the micro events. And we can see we're like awake inside the machine. And that's when choice starts to happen. But some of those things are not simple, and
Right.
they have their roots into all kinds of places of pain. They have all kinds of assumptions, like, I suck and I'm not lovable. It can just be one thread inside there.
And they
It
have their
could be,
people who enable them that are out, in your relationships. They have all the network. But what really thought was curious is that I didn't see it as a bad thing, right? I mean, I didn't really, in this moment of confronting,
yay.
it wasn't bad. I could see the evolutionary driver in here, right? Like there is a need for this desire to always improve and have more, so to speak, if it's guided in the right direction. um Evolutionarily, it's in the collective, it's in each of us to desire, to seek, right? It's when we're not conscious of it.
Or when we're not conscious of it, it tends to be the fuel tends to be fear versus love.
Yeah.
Trying to get perfect out of fear
Uh-huh.
looks really different than perfecting out of love.
Right.
Trying to get your approval because I'm really scared and I want to get perfect, running on fear, versus I am so full of love and I love you so much. How do I perfect my approach with you so that you feel cared for? Really different places. One is like, if I get perfect enough, then I'll get there. The other is the expression of there.
Yeah, I was really grateful for the experience, even though it was a little shocking.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you to be open to that, because these places aren't always flattering. And
No,
it's
not at all.
and it's a bonus when you can get in there without the voices of shame and bad you. Like
Yeah.
a lot of times, becoming aware of something unconscious, you first have to go through a whole layer of this can't be true because if this is true, I'm bad. So I don't want to look there. And the shame that can be on top of the discovery or laced all through it can be excruciating. Like, oh my God, I'm that one.
Yeah, that one, it feels vulnerable. Like I would
Yes.
rather just have this come up in a conversation with you privately, but well,
Way to go. Way to go, Cindy. Way to go.
vulnerable.
Maybe I should go fish around for once so we can be equally exposed. When was the last time I was a jerk?
I don't know. I don't know. So what else about intimacy? I mean, this intimacy with our vulnerability comes up.
Well, let's can we talk about sex for a sec?
Yeah.
Because I've been in relationships with men where intimacy is a code word for sex. Like we don't have enough intimacy, but it always means, we aren't in the sack often enough. I love this. It makes me laugh a lot. And I just want to pull apart intimacy and sexuality. Sexuality can be conducted in an incredibly intimate way, or it can be conducted in a way where both people are isolated, not talking to each other, doing an act, don't feel connected, are largely in fear or just absolute isolation. And I just wanted to mention it because when we think of intimacy, we often think of, you know, sexual relationship. We often think of romantic, whatever. And I just wanted to at least throw a bit out there on this topic. I don't know if we'll go very far with it, but I felt like it wouldn't be complete if we didn't bring that in.
Yeah, that is an assumption that it's about sex. Um, yeah. What else do you want to say about it? I don't. There's not a lot coming up for me. Like I I feel blessed, and my marriage is a long time marriage, and our intimacy is very sweet, and um, there's a lot of presence and tenderness, and it's not always intercourse, just uh, this gentle like being with what's arising,
Yeah.
but it's definitely affected by our intimacy with ourself in the moment, and it's an ebb and a flow. um, and I do notice how when if I have a particular attachment to it being a certain way and it's not that way, that there's judgment that arises. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because when we have an expectation that we're attached to, we aren't walking into the moment open. And openness is what allows intimacy, the same openness to the flowers smell,
Mhm.
the openness to the actual moment and where things are at now. And I find that there is a magic, this is what I've dedicated my life to really, is that there is a part of us that believes that nothing happens unless I drive it and make it happen, right? Me, glorious me, and my control in life, and I got to get there, and da da da.
Yeah.
And that kind of preempting life to make things happen is what most of us have been conditioned inside of. And I
Mhm.
find a lot of people, when they have a big spiritual opening, suddenly that thing doesn't work anymore, and they're very frightened because they don't know yet that there is another rhythm that functions. It's the rhythm of life. It's what grows a baby in a womb and what turns a bud into a flower, et cetera, et cetera. It's in us too. And to the degree that we can enter the moment openly and speak what we notice and speak what's true, something beautiful is created through that we can't own and could never have dreamed of, because in that shared openness, the movement of the Tao, so to speak, the movement of life, of the organic, moves through us and creates beauty, creates harmony, allows natural processes to go. And I think this is a huge, just to bring it back to sexuality, because, how can I not? Um, that I think that there's a real revolution wanting to happen in sexuality, where we are entering this openness and this lack of attachment to outcome to allow the magic of togetherness to roll from there, to roll, for the intimacy to be the beginning, and
Mhm.
for that to express however it wants to, which is absolutely the opposite of what we've been taught, which is do this, do that, make it happen, get there. And it's
Right.
challenging us. It's challenging women, men, challenging all of us in a way, because we are, many of us, attached to the outcome, very attached. We want to be intimate. We want it to have that end right there.
Right.
But in our very efforts to make that end happen, we leave behind the intimacy. We leave behind the radical Openness that allows the magic to happen.
That was the whole thread going through my mind as you were speaking. Like going back to what I encountered, that insatiability that has this agenda to get there. And if that's driving the experience of intimacy, or what we would call intimacy, um, then there's no intimacy.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. We pitched our own and thus we pitched ours together.
yeah, so,
And we can get mad as hell. I know I have experienced this as a younger woman, wanting to be close, wanting someone to validate me in the right way, and it not happening. And the little beast that wants what it thinks it has to have can get downright nasty, manipulative, whatever, trying to get the thing it thinks it has to have to survive. It's amazing. And this is such a rich and potentially fraught and potentially rewarding area because it's both. This is where we get into what I call, let me see if I can remember what I used to call it, evolutionary partnership, where our very relating is pushing us both larger, pushing us both deeper, inquiring into the nature of ourselves, each other, and relating in a really open way, which departs from all the ways we were taught to make it happen so that we can at least get a few of the goods we were promised.
mhm, mhm, yeah, they're not even present then.
Yeah.
Not even. Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you.
I love our conversations. And one of the things I really love is how we have some similarities and we have some differences in the areas we've studied and how we've studied them, but they weave together and kind of expand the conversation. I really love that.
Yeah, I love it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of brings us back to what you said in the beginning with the breathing. It's like making love. Breathing is like making love with the world, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is what I feel like we're doing. It's like you offer something from your natural interest or curiosity or whatever, what you know, what you're excited about. And then I offer something. And the two things weave and make a third thing that neither of us could do by ourselves.
Right. It's that mystical third, or that transcendent function of this is what I feel the consciousness thrives on, is bringing itself together in two different forms, and something incredible that wants to be known can emerge from that.
Yes. Yes. And then those who are listening to us, even though they're not listening to us live, we are having across time we're kind of having a group fest here because whoever's watching this, whenever they watch it, whatever's touched in them, whether it's that it makes them mad or it makes them happy or it opens something or whatever, it's just such a beautiful thing for any of us to be speaking what we know, to be speaking what we experience, and to be open to what someone else experiences, and to be opened by that and expanded by that. It's like, to me, the world, this is how evolution happens, is
Right.
that we are speaking from this kind of open, innocent, playful discovery place, and things come into being, ideas come into being, connections come into being.
Yeah. Well, truth be told, I mean, there was a time where I wasn't having these conversations. I did for years interviews, as you know, and you were one of my guests regularly. And then I stopped for a while. Life turned and things changed, and I was recognizing a little bit of melancholy, and you know, just not really sure what it was that was missing. And then I would have a conversation like this, like an adventurous conversation, and I would feel great. And I recognize that my medicine, if you will, is deep conversation. And if I don't take my medicine regularly, like schedule these kind of conversations with people like yourself, then I do get melancholic. And it is my role to hold space for conversations that allow consciousness to reveal itself. It comes out of hiding, in containers that we create that give it freedom to be seen and experienced and tasted in the
Yeah.
way that we did today.
Well, I have to say, I just looking over at my geranium here, which is like throwing out this great red flower right now, just one single red flower in the middle of all my green over there, that just by doing what we are for, like I find that is the deepest source of joy in my life right now, to do what I'm for. And I see this as one of the things that you're for. It's like you're for this.
Mhm.
And that's like, I think that you call it medicine. It's like the deepest staple, really, for being here.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thanks for
What
confirming.
fun.
All right. Well, thank you again. Thank you everyone for tuning in. And as Jeannie said, I hope this has been helpful and sparked some insight, curiosity, and wonder in you, and maybe a little bit of, um, yeah, inquiry.
Yeah. You know, you used to do these live, didn't you? You did them live.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it would be so fun right now if we had some people that wanted to express what they were noticing or ask questions or
That
whatever.
would be fun.
So
Maybe
maybe we should consider.
the next time I'll invite some friends and you can invite some friends.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
All right, my friend. Thank you again for your time. And
Thank you.
I look forward to the next opportunity and whatever the next topic is. That's
Yeah.
always
We never know.
a wonder. All right.
Take care, dear.
Bye for now.
Bye.